Hello everyone. Welcome back to our literature channel. In today's lecture, we will analyze the character of Mary Turner from Doris Lessing's novel, The Grass is Singing. Mary is the central character of the novel, and her life forms the foundation of the entire story. She is not simply an individual character. She represents the psychological effects of loneliness, colonialism, racism, gender expectations, and emotional isolation. Mary's early life. At the beginning of the novel, Mary is introduced as a young white woman living in town. She works in an office and enjoys a comfortable and independent life. Unlike many women of her society, Mary does not dream of marriage. She enjoys her freedom and social life. She spends time with friends and appears satisfied with her routine. However, one day she accidentally overhears her friends discussing her unmarried status. They criticize her and suggest that there is something wrong with a woman who remains single at her age. This incident deeply affects her. For the first time, she begins to see herself through society's eyes. Feeling embarrassed and insecure, she suddenly decides that she must get married. This decision is not based on love, it is based on social pressure. This moment is extremely important because it marks the beginning of her tragedy. Marriage to Dick Turner. Soon, Mary meets Dick Turner, a struggling white farmer. Dick is kind and honest, but he is poor and unsuccessful. He dreams of becoming a successful farmer, yet every farming project seems to fail. Despite knowing very little about him, Mary marries Dick and moves to his farm. At first, she believes that marriage will bring happiness and stability. Instead, it becomes the source of her suffering. When Mary arrives at the farm, she is shocked by the conditions. The house is small and uncomfortable. There is little money. The weather is extremely hot. The farm is isolated from society. The reality is completely different from her expectations. Failure to adapt. One of Mary's greatest weaknesses is her inability to adapt. She has spent her life in town and knows nothing about farm life. The daily hardships gradually wear down her spirit. She becomes increasingly frustrated with Dick because he cannot provide the lifestyle she expected. For example, Dick continues experimenting with different farming projects. Every time he believes success is near, another failure follows. Mary loses confidence in him. Instead of becoming partners, husband and wife begin living emotionally separate lives. This emotional distance becomes one of the major causes of Mary's psychological decline. Mary's relationship with African workers. Another important aspect of Mary's character is her attitude toward African servants and workers. Mary has been raised within colonial society. Like many white settlers, she has learned to believe that black people are inferior. As a result, she often treats servants harshly. One important incident occurs when she becomes angry with a servant and strikes him across the face. This moment demonstrates both her racial prejudice and her desire for control. However, Doris Lessing does not present Mary as simply evil. Mary is also trapped within the racist system that shaped her thinking. She has inherited attitudes that she rarely questions. Psychological breakdown. As the novel progresses, Mary becomes increasingly lonely. The farm isolates her from friends and social life. She feels trapped in a marriage that offers little emotional support. Financial problems continue to grow. Gradually, her mental health begins to deteriorate. She experiences anxiety, fear, emotional instability, and depression. She withdraws from society and spends much of her time alone. Many critics view Mary as a psychologically damaged character who cannot cope with the pressures surrounding her. The environment itself seems to attack her peace of mind. The heat, silence, poverty, and isolation all contribute to her breakdown. Relationship with Moses. Perhaps the most complex part of the novel is Mary's relationship with Moses. Moses is a black servant working on the Turner farm. Earlier in the novel, Mary humiliates him. Later, circumstances bring them together again.
As Mary's mental state worsens, she develops a strange dependence on Moses. Although she fears him, she also relies on him. Their relationship challenges the racial boundaries established by colonial society. Mary experiences conflicting emotions that she cannot fully understand. She is caught between attraction, fear, dependence, guilt, and social conditioning. This inner conflict becomes one of the novel's most powerful psychological themes. Acceptance of fate. As the novel approaches its conclusion, Mary seems almost resigned to her fate. She no longer struggles to improve her situation. Instead, she appears exhausted by life. When Moses eventually murders her, the event feels less like a sudden surprise and more like the inevitable result of everything that has happened before. Her death symbolizes the complete collapse of her personal world. Mary as a symbol. She symbolizes as the failure of colonial society, the destructive effects of racism, the dangers of loneliness and isolation, the pressure placed upon women by society, the psychological damage caused by emotional repression. Through Mary Turner, Doris Lessing demonstrates how social systems can destroy human lives.
Critical evaluation. Some readers view Mary as a victim. Others view her as partly responsible for her own suffering. The truth lies somewhere between these two positions. Mary makes poor decisions, especially her impulsive marriage. However, she is also trapped by social expectations, colonial ideology, and circumstances beyond her control. This complexity makes her one of the most memorable characters in 20th century African literature. Her story is not only a personal tragedy, but also a criticism of colonial society, racial prejudice, and social pressure. Through Mary's character, Doris Lessing reveals the psychological and moral failures of the world in which she lived. Thank you for watching.